Yes, it's still very hard to reach over with my left hand and turn off that mute button. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow in Pit Lane's weekly get together. It's just a few friends getting together and having a chat about all things motorsport and other things that may amuse us or otherwise. Tomorrow night on In Pit Lane on Channel 31 at 9. It's 9 o'clock, isn't it? Yes, I've forgotten our own time slot. At 9 o'clock, a special show tomorrow night because of my incapacity at the moment. We're going to take the opportunity to run an extended version of our interview with Australian motorsport legend Colin Bond. It was a fabulous chat, and this is only a small part, even though it takes up the whole show basically. It's still a very small part of the chat with Colin, and that covers a tiny bit of his career. But I'm sure you'll find there's lots of great stories. He's a terrific guy. As I said last week, 81 years old, sharp as a tack, absolutely, as fit as a fiddle, very impressive guy. And he talks about his early days of hill climbing and rallying with Mitsubishi, round Australia trials, driving the Formula 5000s with Frank Matic and basically why he didn't go on, how that transpired. If you remember, it was a famous story that at his first ever Formula 5000 drive at the Australian Grand Prix at Warwick Farm in those days, it just so happened that it was wet. And Colin Bond, in his very first race, went out in Frank's spare Matic McLaren M10B, and set the fastest time, beating all of the internationals who turned up, Graham McRae, Steve Robertson, all of the people who turned up to be in contention there. Colin, and Colin sort of tells the story about how that happened, and it's a fascinating story, trust me. And then what could have happened afterwards in terms of the offers that he had to go overseas that he decided not to follow up. So that's tomorrow night on the program, and then later on, as soon as I get the opportunity, we'll put up the full version of that interview. We'll also put up the full version of the interview with Scott Pye and an extended interview with Mark Frosty Winterbottom as well. Haven't had the opportunity to do that, unfortunately. Still got problems with the shoulder, which is making it very, very difficult to get around to doing as per usual. But anyway, so joining us this week, we've got Richard, we've got Mark, and we've got Pete. And Richard, I understand you've been away. You've been been on a bit of a trip. Tell us about your weekend adventure.
I went to Challenge Bathurst and had a black. You don't. Well, actually, you don't win. You get. It's regularity. If you want to spend tens of thousands, you just do super sprint. But I did finish 8 out of 50 in the regularity, which isn't too bad. I had the spare car because the blue car has been repaired but hasn't been put back together again, and it was quicker than my own car.
From what I heard, the weather conditions up there were interesting.
Whoops. They were sort of good. And the last run of the day was the most interesting. I go, it's fine. It's sunny. It's good. It'll be fine. We can pack away the wet weather tyres. We can put the dries and let down the tyres, and then this big anvil head of lightning and thunder rolls up, and as we're parked on the dummy grid just about to go, it hosed down, absolutely hosed down, but it was dry on top of the mountain. Who would have ever thought that of Bathurst? Who's ever seen that before?
So what was the field like? I mean, I had a look I had a brief look through NatSoft to see if I could track you down, but I didn't know what group you were running in, and it was hard to find. But there seemed to be an awful lot of cars there.
Oh, well, 50 in each group, basically. This year, the driving was significantly better. No one trying to overtake you into the dipper. And you go, wow, haven't you ever watched television before? This time they were coming up, the faster cars coming up behind you, let you know you're there. You open the steering up, going through McPhillamy, and they go through. Lovely. that's how it's all meant to work. So I was able to get clean laps and go for it. Almost seconds better than last year, and that was with the car which was the caster, the camber, and the toe were all not right.
Well, there you go. Well, we've got people joining us again. We'll say hello to some of the regulars. Good day to Box, saying evening all. If you're wondering, this arm is in a sling and is not able to be. So I've got to actually physically turn around, reach over like this in order to bring up the next person, which is David Hodgins. Good evening, David. Good day to you too. Paul Vandacker is with us again as well. Good day, Paul. How are you? Someone's done very well. Yes, that David Hodgins. That's Bathurst. Yes, that a different Bathurst. Bathurst for the rest of us. But I thought there were some pretty fast cars up there. I mean, one of the prototypes set the fastest lap of the weekend. One of the Wolf prototypes.
Oh, yeah.
And they're a seriously quick car. I don't know what time
the Radicals and the Wolves are unbelievably fast, and you can hear them from the other end of Bathurst.
They're really they are really good. SB is with us again too. Good day to USB as well. So anyway, as you say, I'd heard that from a number of people there, including a number of the officials, that they were very impressed this year with the standard of driving compared with some years previous. But God, it was just such a busy weekend. I mean, you had Challenge Bathurst, but you also had, of course, the final round of the Supercars running around the streets of Adelaide, and as more or less was expected, a victory to Brodie Kostecki. First of all,
spoiler, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, boy, have you come
on the program?
Have you come to the wrong place?
Yeah, I figured that was right.
Hang on, we got there, David. I think David is saying David, known from over sources. I'm not sure what these sources are. Probably Bernays. Bernays is one of my very favourite sources, and I do a quite good Bernays. Whoops, don't tell it. So anyway, we'll find out more about Bathurst at some stage. But there's some talk about, because of the situation with the opening round of the Supercars, that if something's going to go from the 5 rounds at Bathurst, it will probably be Challenge Bathurst. And that would be a shame. So that's why they've done this thing about turning it into, because it says 5 meetings a year. The law says the motorsport, the Bathurst or Mount Panorama Motorsport Act in the New South Wales Parliament apparently says something along the time that the track will be fully closed for 5 meetings a year. It doesn't say how many days those meetings are. So they're going to stretch out the Bathurst 12-hour, which incidentally has a brand new naming right sponsor in Repco. So the Repco Bathurst 12-hour. And they'll run that on there. And once again, because for about the 4th year in a row, despite the fact that I've got accommodation booked, I'm going to miss it because of this damn shoulder and other things. So so I'm not happy about that. But so that's what they're going to do. They're just going to take it. So they're going to call it. They're going to run over 2 weeks and call it 1 meeting. So, which if you look at it the logical way, it means they could just run, for a month or more, and have races every single week. Yeah. The Bathurst, January, the Bathurst Festival of Motorsport. Start off on New Year's Day and go through to Australia Day. Something every single.
The Bathurst season of motorsport.
Very good, Mark.
Very good. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does.
To the season of Bathurst.
Oh yeah.
Ooh. Oh yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be fun. Okay, well, let's talk about Brodie Kostecki winning a bad start. It couldn't have got off to any worse start for Shane Van Gisbergen in his last race. And I don't know, Pete, did you get the impression that basically once he was out of the first race and the championship was basically gone, that physically Shane was in Adelaide, but mentally he was running. He was somewhere in downtown Daytona.
Yeah, he was mentally he was elsewhere. He was this because that normally, like on the Sunday, he was in and out of the pits, and normally he's not like that. Normally he will drive around the problem for a little while, and but he was virtually straight in the pit saying, "No, it's no better, and I can't do anything with it." And yeah,
it's Yeah, he seemed to be very, and once again, it was a steering problem. And there's been a few of them have said that this steering thing is an issue. It's not just Shane, but Shane has hated it the most. It's interesting if you watched our interview with Scott Pye last week on the show. He was talking about how different these cars are to drive, and how basically it's taken a lot of the driver skill away. He said it's now more of a team and engineer category. He said because basically you're given the car you're given, and there's nothing much we can do. We can drive it to the best, but if we need to make changes in terms of they've got to make the changes. We've got to sort of say, hey, can you soften it up at the front? Can you stiffen it up at the whatever? Change the right whatever they want doing. They can't do it themselves anymore, and so for some drivers, they're really enjoying that,
particularly the younger ones.
I think that was it. I think the comment that he used in terms of particularly, he said there's two teams that were winning. They've obviously got it raced, and one of those teams, and obviously the team that eventually did win overall. He said, you can't tell me that suddenly, Brody and Will went from not being able to be, at the top level to suddenly being at the top level without there being major changes in the car. And he said that for that reason, he said the car was perhaps not as much fun. I asked him specifically if you have a look about whether that was Shane's problem, and he felt it probably was that Shane was really frustrated the fact that I know what's wrong with it. I know what I need to do to make this feel comfortable under me. I can't touch the bloody thing.
Yeah.
What about the event all up? It seemed to be another very successful Adelaide 500.
It was good. It was yeah. And again, on the Sunday, we had a different winner and another rookie, Matt Payne, on the Sunday.
Yeah, and Ford dominance, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, parody people. I mean, when are they going to do something about the poor Chevrolets? Chevy,
that's coming next.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's going to be Tim Edwards' problem now. That's going to raise some. It's like, finally, we've got a Ford man in there. Oops, hang on a second.
It's the same problem that he had before. He's just viewing it from a different
angle.
He's a stakeholder with a different set of values now.
The interesting thing is those the aerodynamic changes that they made to the Ford is obviously has worked very much. And hearing from some of the drivers, they were all sort of saying the car is a lot more drivable now. They said they don't really notice it until sort of later in the race when they realise that, hang on, we've still got some tyres to play with. We can still get out of the corners well, and the car just seems a lot more neutral and a lot more balanced. So, yeah, it looks like the changes they made. But now it'll be interesting because now they'll finally have the benefit of wind tunnel testing. And wouldn't it be ironic if they get over there and do the wind tunnel testing and they come out of the wind tunnel and they go, actually, Ford has a massive advantage now.
Yes. Embarrassment.
And we'll spend the whole season all over again doing the same stuff.
Well, that's the problem.
How transparent do we have to be on this one, guys? Yeah.
It's going to be a problem because they want it to be. I think the interesting thing is, and the word that Tim Edwards has used, and it's going back, and it was interesting that in the interview that he did, he paid a lot of tribute to Tony Cochrane, And he was saying about Tony what I've said about Tony and the
It
good
was an
relationship
entertainment.
that I had. Yes, that he was. This was show business. This is entertainment.
Yeah.
And Tim now understands that. He couldn't at first, and then having spent time working with Tony, he suddenly realised what motorsport in general needs to realise is: hang on, you charge people to come through the gate. You have a responsibility to give them value for money and put on a show.
Exactly. That's
Remember,
what we've
this
said
was,
for many years, Brett.
Yep.
Oh,
very
Robbie
much so.
Francevic was pointing that out to everybody in the 1980s.
Yeah.
He was right.
And he came, coming from New Zealand, of course, with Robbie. That's been an approach they've had in New Zealand for a long time. It's like, hey, this needs to be fun. It needs to be accessible. It needs to be people. We need to encourage people to come out and watch this. So, let's make sure we put on a show. But anyway, but yeah, Adelaide went really, really well. The support categories, didn't see too many of them. Congratulations to our mate John Bow as well. Bowie in his last touring car masters event was very competitive until the multicoloured, the Partridge Family sponsored A9X fell in a heap for the last, and I think it was Jim Policina who stood aside and said no, you don't want to go out like that. Jump in my car and drive that instead for the last race. So so that's really, that'll be very emotional because John, there's no doubt. I mean, talking to John right throughout the year and at Basketball just recently, he still has a huge passion for the sport and would love to be out there in some other things as well. And I think that's the opportunities he's got now. He will be out in GT4. He's going to be running GT4 next year, as will, for instance, Chaz Mostert. Chaz Mostert has a team that he's starting, and when the opportunity arises, he's going to run GT4. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see a few other supercar drivers in either GT4 or GT3 now that SRO have taken over the full running of the thing. It'll be a much more professionally run series now. So that might encourage a few more sort of professionals to jump on board, and we should see some good racing.
I'm going to point out that because professional and amateur have become loaded terms in the last couple of decades, and the professional doesn't mean to slight amateur, because it's just when we say professional, because the Australian GT Championship and the Fanatec GT World Cup Australia that it's become has been focused on amateur drivers, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it's
that's the same with GT3. I mean, this is what the ACO are on about in terms of what they're doing with GT3. That people like particularly Chevrolet with the Corvette team are very annoyed about it because they want to run full factory teams with full factory drivers. But the ACO in particular are saying no, this is a class. There is a professional class. It's called hypercar, and it's a big money class with big name drivers and people straight out of Formula One and all the rest of it. That's the top level. But underneath it, just underneath it, there is a category for so-called what used to be called gentleman drivers. People who still invest a lot of money, and some of them who are very, very talented and capable drivers.
They're brilliant. There's excellent drivers at all levels of the sport, and
they're the people who are bringing the money in. And what's more, they're the ones who are employing some of the other professional drivers or bringing in young drivers and saying, well, hey, I've just bought myself a brand new Lamborghini. I want to race it in, say, the Asian Le Mans series. I'm not that good. I need somebody to train me up. I'll find some young Australian driver or some young international driver who can come on over and basically co-drive the car with me and teach me how to drive this bloody thing. That's what people like Ricky Capo and others have done, and hopefully they get an opportunity to do that more in the future.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's long been amateurs have long been the backbone of motorsport, particularly here in Australia. And
Guys, I'm just
we
going to have
went.
to. Can you keep going? I'm just going to take a break. I've got some problems here at the moment. I will be back with you in a moment. So yeah, if you can just take a break.
Yeah.
Just talk amongst yourselves, people. Yeah.
So you were saying about, Mark, you were saying?
The amateur drivers have been the backbone of Australian motorsport for forever. I mean, guys like Lex Davison, for example, who was one of our best drivers in the 50s and 60s, but he was still an amateur because he had his own business, and motorsport was something that he did as well.
Yeah.
Well, you only have to look at the paddock, and you can see the trailers stacked up one beside the other, and the driver owns the business which supports the team, and it supports all those mechanics, and a whole host of stuff.
And it's creates also progression for teammates or co-drivers, and of course all that crew who then move up the spectrum. And there shouldn't be this loaded analogy of professional and amateur. I mean, the difference is that the guys who are the professional drivers don't do anything else. Motor racing is all they do. And and when we say that that the GTs are moving in a more professional direction next year, and that's what it means. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that this mob isn't doing a good job. It's just a change of focus.
Can you imagine how empty the grid would be if from the top categories, if you took all the amateurs out of it? It would be a ghost town.
Well, and you look back through the history of Australian motorsport. Back as far as you go back to, say, the 1980 Australian Touring Car Championship, there was maybe 3 professional drivers in the series and maybe 5 professional drivers in total. There was, we had the Formula One world champion at the time, but other outside of Brock and Bartlett and not even Dick Johnson could be called a professional at that time.
No, it wasn't until after the Rock incident that he was getting paid for it.
Yeah, Brock, Bartlett, Moffat, and maybe that was about it. I'd have to think hard about. But
Colin Bond might have got a bit of money now and then.
Oh well, yeah. Colin Bond was basically being employed as Steve Masterton's driver coach at the time in the Capri team, wasn't he?
Well, that's sort of what I meant. Some of them, a few of them, got money via the back door or from the, but it wasn't directly. Just here's a check because you're going to drive my car. Here's a check because you're going to drive my car and do something else.
The weekend at Adelaide, though, was I thought was a fantastic weekend all around. We had every category that was running there had championships to decide. We saw Super 2 between Kai Allen and Zach Best went all the way to the end.
Yes,
just about.
Yet.
Come on, Richard. You're hamstringing the.
Come on, you've got to talk about it. I haven't seen it all because I was up at the Bathurst Challenge, and now I'm trying to catch up madly on KO. I'm scrolling through everything to try and catch up. But tell us about
what are the things that we can't. We had a bit of a grandstand finish. I've brought up Super 2, and now I'm struggling to remember what happened. I'm getting a little old myself now. But yeah, the best was our points leader heading into the final, heading into the Adelaide weekend, but Alan was able to overcome. We saw Ryan Wood actually just dominated Super 2 over the course of the weekend, and actually jumped up into third place in the points, if memory serves, off the back of it. Like, he won both races and was pretty dominant actually in both of them. Super 3 was probably the only category that hadn't, the category that was wrapped up. I mean, even if it was mathematical, Job Stewart certainly had a significant points margin on the rest of the championship, and but I think it's going to be hard to say that that Cameron McLeod wasn't the star of Super 3 this year. And then we had the same sort of situation in Carrera Cup that happened in Supercars, where we had a lap one collision that took out one of the championship protagonists.
Yeah.
And that was a unfortunate little pileup going through turn one. So the Super Utes wrapped up as well. Aaron Borg going back to back with different cars, from a different car from this year to last year. Although I suppose the Holden and the Isuzu aren't that much. Oh no, they are completely different cars now. I'd forgotten that. Oh, I'm struggling to remember the with Kai Allen and Zach Best now, and I brought it up, and now I can't follow through. And we've lost.
Yes, Brett's gone, but he's sitting back in his chair again. But
maybe he's bumped a button, and he'll be back with us shortly.
What about the S5000s? That was going very well, even though the fields are more limited than I'd like to see.
Yeah.
They've still haven't got more than 11.
No.
It would be nice to see them with 20.
Brilliant. They're brilliant cars. Like the
I love them.
the Ligier race created race car, which we call a Rogers AF01 or F101. Which is, I believe, it's Ligier's Formula Regional, what we used to call Formula 3, but there's a new Formula 3 now, of course. They're really good cars, and of course they've got that fantastic V8 mounted into the back of it for the glorious sounds. They're great, and we've seen some drivers really excel. Like Nathan Hearn's was one driver who's come up through this, and he was back for Adelaide on the weekend.
Yeah.
Joey Mawson has been he's been far and away the best of the S5000 crew. And he was still, even though he only did the opening 3 rounds of the championship this year, he was still a points leader with 1.5 rounds to go. But yeah, he was eventually overhauled.
Aaron Cameron.
You might if you've noticed a bit of strange sound all of a sudden. I've had to, unfortunately, I've had to take the earphones out because I couldn't. Trying to get back in with only one arm, I moved the chair back. The cord got caught under the wheels of the chair and ripped the whole sound system down. So I've had to unplug everything. And
it's not going well tonight.
Exactly the same.
That's good. That's good. I've turned it down as low as at this end. I've turned it down as low as possible. But yeah, I think as we're talking about the S5000s, got there. It's such a shame that they're. It's such a shame that they don't have the numbers, and I haven't heard anything. There's been no talk that I've heard. Has anybody heard anything about
2024? You mean?
No,
haven't.
other than this year, they're
no.
having problem with licensing and using them as a stepping stone up into supercars.
Yeah, well, that's
And-
part of the
and that was
problem in
holding them
terms of
back.
getting the young drivers. But of course, over here on this side of the border, we had down at Phillip Island, Tim Macro's Formula Open series was running down
yes.
at the island. And if you had a look at the racing, they had a huge field, very good racing. The two Formula Threes up the front, Ryan Howe and get the other the other guy involved.
Miles Bromley.
Yeah, yes. They put on a hell
One
of
of a great Queensland
race.
Formula V racer, Grant Bromley. And yeah, Miles has really kicked on this year, and he's had his best meeting of the season at the last one. So it's brilliant to see Miles stepping up.
Yeah, it was good racing and it looked good. Now the other sort of bizarre fly in the ointment is the fact that we're also going to get a new Formula 4 series being run by a Chinese company running, and this is the way that I think S5000, I think we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, this is the way that S5000 should be doing it. They're running it on the basis of, maximising driver time. They're concentrating. They're not even thinking about going on to big meetings or anything like that. They're going to run a couple of rounds of the Shannon series. Of course, Motorsport Australia, who are still besotted by Formula 4, despite the fact that it was an unmitigated financial and otherwise disaster, are very keen to see it come back. And you've got people like Team BRM who do run in S5000, AGI, and a number of teams. Now, the interesting thing for that series is most of the rounds are going to be at places like the Bend, Sydney Motorsport Park, but the final is going to be held at Sepang up in Malaysia.
Well, yeah, because this is essentially an Asian series that's running in Australia. That's like the majority of the field are going to be young Asian drivers, and we've got a number of the teams are coming over from Asia to race in it, and we're certainly going to see a couple of the prominent Australian open wheel teams join in, but it is essentially a relocated Asian series running here. And,
and I think that's something we're going to see in the future. I would imagine, like this year, in fact, starting this weekend at Sepang is the Asian Le Mans series, which once again has very good fields, and they've been running because of COVID. They basically ran in sort of like this condensed version in Abu Dhabi and the UAE. But they've now moved back to Sepang for the opening round, and I'm sure that next year that the opening round or the final round will probably be at the Bend, because I know that Sam Shaheen has been very, very keen to get the Asian Le Mans series back to the Bend, and I'd be very keen if they come back as well, because I missed it the last time. Doc went across and had an absolute ball, and everybody who went there said the cars looked and sounded fabulous there.
Oh, I'd love to be able to see LMP2s and LMP3s running around.
Yeah, they are. Well, the thing about it, LMP2, LMP3, they're still incredibly fast cars. I mean, LMP3 is, they're around 500 horsepower just for that, and then a bit more for the LMP2 cars. They're not slow cars, that's for sure. They're viciously quick.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the LMP3s are not like their engine is more or less the engine that Nissan used in their supercar operation here.
Yeah, that's
basically, I mean, not exactly the same, obviously, but from the same sort of architecture.
Yeah, same architecture. Now that's going to change. They're going to be replaced with a turbocharged engine, but I believe the Gibson V8 that currently runs in LMP2 is going to remain, at least for the foreseeable future, in LMP2. Because the problem is they don't really know what to do with LMP2 now. I mean, Hypercar and LMDH have been so ridiculously successful that there's just no room on the on the World Endurance Championship for them. But a lot of those teams that were running in that are now going over and will be racing at IMSA. for the North American Sports Car Championship, and of course in races like or series like the Asian Le Mans Series and the European Le Mans Series. So sports car racing is booming.
Yeah, and this is off the back of, I guess, a global decline in touring cars as we see fewer and fewer sedans being arguably it started here, where the Australian public fell out of love with sedans, but it's becoming an increasingly global trend.
It's hard to find any sort of like if you're looking like obviously like the replacement for the Camaro. I mean, people are saying, well, okay, what's going to replace it out of the General Motors stable? And it's like, well, there really isn't one. It's interesting to note that when we spoke to Scott Pye and we're asking him about the future, that he did sort of say at one stage that there's a lot of work. He said, are the Australian public sort of ready to accept the Corvette as a supercar? But that's the idea that sort of Chevrolet have got at the moment, and some of the European manufacturers, where they're saying that we don't race sedans, we don't race SUVs, they're for the public. We race sports cars. That's what they're there for. Sports cars are what we race, and these are non-compromise, sort of designed to go fast and to be driven on weekends by people who like driving them fast. And so that's the advantage that GT3 and GT4 have over anything that supercars have got running around right now, because you've got a whole bunch of manufacturers. I mean, you've got manufacturers like Mercedes and all the rest of it who want to run the ACO races, if the World Endurance Championship, who are being told, no, sorry, no room for you. We don't have enough spaces. We've limited. We want lots of variety. There's no room for you. So Mercedes are being told, no, goodbye. You're not racing.
No, I know you've got a GT3. That's nice, but bring us a hypercar and we'll talk to you.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is they've said that they're going to work this year on making sure that the grid is expanded for next year to 40 cars, because the problem they've got is they've got to be able to transport them around, and then they've got to be able to have room for them in the pits. And some of the pit lanes, the cars, the pit lanes have only got space for 25, 28, 29 garages with a couple of cars in them each, and they're struggling to fit them in on it. I think Monza's one where they've got a problem, and there's a couple of tracks that they run at that real hassle. But
and just as a sideline to that, the guys heard the news about the World Endurance Championship for next year.
In what way?
Matty Campbell has been promoted from the IMSA series to the World Endurance Championship.
As he should be. I couldn't believe when he didn't get the drive at Le Mans this year. I thought that is crazy, because he had done so well in the races that he did him. So that's real. So that's good news. So another an Aussie getting there. The other Aussie that I'm amazed hasn't been picked up by somebody, and who at this stage I haven't heard what his plans are for 2024 is, of course, the local driver James Allen. I mean, the guy has won everything in his category that he's won the European Le Mans Series. He won his class at Daytona. He won at Le Mans. He's won at Monza. He's won all sorts of races with that team, and apparently there's no space at the inn for him at the moment. So he's been consistently quick. I mean, he's gone in with some of his, far more well-credentialed and famous co-drivers, and he's gone in and, they put him in the car to qualify, and not people like Will Stevens, for instance, who's an ex-Formula One driver, albeit a very short career for Will in Formula One, but he's still an ex-Formula One driver, and James Allen jumped in instead. But anyway, speaking of which, let's move on to the Grand Prix. Once again, because of the time and all the rest, I didn't see much of it. I saw highlights and all the rest of it, but it looked a pretty good race.
Yeah, it's a good race. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Oscar Piastri's doing well.
He did, and didn't have to do a humiliating last lap pit stop because he had to run 2 different tires this time. And yeah,
Yeah, that was a
to
stuffer.
being fair though, Lando Norris had Oscar's measure at
Yes.
Yas Marina. So there have been tracks where Oscar's been as good as Lando, and there's been tracks where he's maybe even been a little bit better. But no, not at Yas Marina. Lando definitely had Oscar's measure. But it's his first year, and actually one of the things I saw was the point score for the 4 rookies
The
this
rookies,
year.
yes.
Yeah, there was Nick DeVries didn't score points at all. Liam Lawson got 1 or 2.
Logan Sargent.
Logan Sargent, it was Logan Sargent who got 1, and Lawson got 2, and then Piastri 97.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It
not
kind of
bad. Not a
stands
bad
out.
effort in your first year. And as you say, there's been some. It's interesting that there's been talk around around the scenes in Europe as well, with a number of people saying that oh look, well done McLaren, because long term, and they've got some leverage now on Lando. If they want to, Lando can't throw his weight around too much, because it's like well, we've got a pretty good guy, sort of just sitting here. You're good, but in his first year, he's probably done better than most. So next year he's bound to be. He can only get better after a full year behind the wheel.
And hasn't this justified the whole argument over Alpine versus McLaren at the start of the season? Hasn't this just said, we know what you're talking about. We know what we're doing. We know what we're talking about. The rest of you go away. McLaren's the right
And
pick.
the problem is, I mean, the same thing unfortunately is now happening with Jack Doohan as well. I mean, he's got and he hasn't been named in the Alpine LMDH team for Le Mans. I mean, Mick Schumacher's there. And a few experienced sports car hands, but everybody thought that because Jack's already said I'm not running in Formula 2 next year, no matter how I do. And of course, he won that last race and won it very, very comfortably. So, so no one knows what he's doing next year, apart from basically, providing Alpine sort of say, well, no, we still want you as our reserve driver, but is he just going to, wander around?
He's been very busy this week. He's been the Alpine's lead driver at postseason Formula One testing. So so at least there's that going for him at the moment. That Alpine are very keen to have him as at least for the testing and, as you say, Brett, the reserve duties as well.
Hopefully he gets to drive somewhere. I would hope in the in the LMDH, but even if they can't find him something there, they've got to find him, something to do somewhere in a reasonable sort of at a reasonable level, because you'd want him to get some racing miles. It's interesting once again with Scott Pye saying he said that I don't know whether it's true or not that he said, well, I have no idea what I'm doing, but he was very clear. I'm going to be doing something. I'm not because I need
Scott's too good to be lost from the sport.
Yeah, well, he said I need race miles. He said, otherwise I can't just sort of turn up and do Sandown and Bathurst with 888. I've got to have some other things. Now he said, I haven't, as he said at the time, nothing was planned, but 888 do run GT programs, including in Asia and with the Asian GT series. So Brock Phoenix races, James with the Prince or the Princes.
And Jamie Winkup himself has done races there as well, so that's been contributing to his off-season miles between enduros. So certainly the playbook is there.
Yeah, the Oscar must be good. Sky Sport keeps singing his praises. It's taken them a while. I mean, in the start of the year, it was very much like, they rushed this young man through, and it's like, he's not showing, not doing as well as Lando. But now once he started, qualifying right next door to Lando, and then qualifying better than Lando, and then beating Lando, they seem to have jumped on board. He's also got that, he's also got the Daniel Ricciardo factor as well, is the fact that he's very likable, and all of the journalists are saying, oh, what a breath of fresh air young Oscar is. I mean, he's very accessible, and he turned up at the race in his Brett Lee Australian cricket one day cricket gear from the old days, which Binger absolutely loved. He tweeted about very quickly. It's like
So that was off the back of the World Cup win, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you can imagine sort of, especially after how well England did. You can imagine him sort of, imagine Oscar coming in, and as we've said before, Oscar, passionate cricket fan and a really quite capable young cricketer as well. If you have a look if you haven't seen it yet, there is something on Sky F1, a sort of a cricket Australia versus the rest of the world with Oscar and Lando, and it's very clear that Lando spent all of his youth perhaps kicking around a soccer ball and running carts, whereas it was very clear that Lando knew which end of a bat to hold and how to swing it around. But so anyway, so that's the year in Formula One. Once again, I didn't catch up with. I know they're testing, or they have been testing MotoGP. I had a little bit of a look at the postseason test for MotoGP. It seems that Marquez has come up to speed pretty quickly on the Ducati, but
fourth quickest already.
I really haven't heard anything. Once again, I haven't got the tickers at the moment because I can't. It takes me hours to sit there. In fact, this week's show took me. Normally, when all the bits come in from the studio, it probably takes me about 2.5 to 3 hours to edit it all together. This was far less work than we'd normally do. It was just basically the Colin Bond interview and our band who came in last night, the Grandfather Paradox, who incidentally were fabulous. That was basically it, and a couple of things I did through StreamYard just to say hello and goodbye. And it's taken the best part of 2 days because it's like, okay, I've got to hold down the control, so it's control. No, they're not. Hang on, I've got to put a pen in my mouth and bend. Oh, I can't bend because of the back. And, oh God.
Yeah, you'd never get Control Alt Delete, would you?
No, God, no. Well, thankfully on a Mac, I don't really need all that. But it's it's been so frustrating trying to get things done, and unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be going on for a long time to come. So, as I said, in future for this program. We will probably continue on and off, not necessarily every week, certainly not every week. But as I was saying to the guys before we came on, I've got quite the battle ahead of me in terms of operations, and not just on my shoulder as well. I've got some major surgery coming up, and I'm going to be sort of stuck around here and bored out of my effing mind. So the opportunity of popping up and chatting to you and a few friends about the sport will take my mind off things and hopefully keep me moderately sane, because between shoulders and feet and other things and Christmas, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cricket shirt was a dig at Karun. Oh, right, Karun Chandler.
Oh, yes, of course.
And of course, Karun's brother is a very good cricketer. Played district cricket in Adelaide as a visiting international professional. In fact, we were going to try and catch up with him at one stage when he was over here. Jamie, who worked on the show, knew of him because he knew Karun from the days when Sam Abbey was running Formula 3, and then Karun was running at the same time. They became friends. So, Karun's brother was playing on a regular basis in first grade cricket in Adelaide, and there were some rumours that he might be hanging around and looking perhaps to eventually try and get into the Sheffield Shield side or something, because he was apparently that good. So that would make sense. That would really annoy the hell out of Karun, wouldn't it?
Oh, dear, that podium for the World Cup presentation.
Yes, it was like I
Yes,
loved the comment from Pat Cummins, who just said, I think it was after they got Coley out of something, they all came together and they were all celebrating, and then Cummins said, shh, shh, listen. And there was 100,000 people, not a sound. He said, "Isn't that the most beautiful sound you've ever heard in all your life?" Yes, apparently Mark has come off the Ducati, but he came off with a big smile. Yes, I'm not surprised he's come. Let's face it, he's come off too many things, so hopefully he doesn't continue that. But he's going to be a lot more. We know he's going to be a lot more competitive. Speaking of Ducatis and bikes in general, and the World Endurance Championship, the doctor is in. Valentino Rossi will be running the World Endurance Championship in a BMW in the GT3.
the M4 GT3, yeah, with WIP, who runs his M4 GT3 in the European series already. So
yeah, and he's done very well. I mean, he's been very impressive in terms of the way he's approached it. He hasn't gone in hell for leather. I don't think he's had a couple of minor offs. I don't think he's had any major incidents, and everybody, he's been very competitive. He's set like really quick times. So so he's sort of embracing that, because there's rumors going around that he's currently his Team 46 or whatever it's called in the MotoGP will be moving away from Ducati at the end of next year and going and re-establishing a relationship with Yamaha, which is probably not the cleverest thing to do in terms of being competitive, but I'm sure there's a really good commercial reason, because Yamaha would love to have a relationship back again with Valentino, because he's a very popular young man.
Not so young anymore.
Reasonably, yeah. He's got a pretty ardent supporter group out there, and for excellent reason.
Yes, as Jimmy's saying, Oscar will be Australia's next world champion. You would have to think he's certainly got a huge chance to do that. I mean, McLaren seem to be getting more and more competitive. They've closed the gap up, at least on most tracks. Unfortunately, what their problem at the moment is consistency. They're a bit like Williams. It's like on some tracks they're fantastic, and even Zach Brown was saying, I think of the race before, he just said, he said, we just can't. This track isn't for us. We knew it. Where we fed in all the details into the simulator, and the simulator, the computer said no. It was like, it just didn't.
I'm having visions of David Williams.
Yeah. But anyway, so Formula One finished for another year, but it was funny when they were talking to Max and sort of said, and it all kicks off again in something like 8 weeks or something, and Max sort of had that look on his face of, oh no.
That's why they pay you the big bucks, mate.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Well, if he wants to, race less and still get paid good money for it, he could come over here and race the supercars. I mean,
exactly.
Nice condensed calendar.
Yeah.
Maybe he can strike a deal with Red Bull where he only does 3/4 of the races, because he'll still win the world championship.
Yes.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not, because they say that the penalty they got for breaching the salary cap will actually have an effect on them sort of next year. But the other side of that is that they won't have had to do much development on a new car, because they haven't had to iron any bugs out, unlike Mercedes and etc. Yeah.
The whole grid behind Red Bull.
I remember seeing an analysis during the season of how all the Formula One teams were doing this year compared to last year, and only 2 teams had improved, and it was on the basis of points scored, and Red Bull obviously had massively increased their points haul from last year, and the only other team to have improved their points haul from the previous season was Aston Martin.
Yeah, and
everybody else had gone backwards.
Places of a hell of a start to the season, because for the first few races we were saying, oh, this is What a fight this is going to be. Max versus Fernando. This is going to be
Yeah.
what a beauty this is going
It'll
to
be
be.
a knockout.
Yeah, they just went. The Astons sort of went backwards, and Red Bull just kept ploughing through.
But it's Max. I mean, Sergio Checo is not having the success that Max is.
Well, that's part of the problem, isn't it? I mean, sort of you have a look, and then they've got Liam Lawson sitting there, and there's another driver who's in the log jam. I mean, he's well and truly proven that he can perform at that level with his, and he's got nowhere to go. I don't know what they're going to do with him next year. I mean, apart from being a reserve driver, but the problem is you can be a reserve driver for years and years and years, and by the time whoever you're replacing was scheduled to replace is retiring or has been sacked or something, they go, oh, actually, how old are you now? Oh, you're 28. Oh, that's now look, we got this kid straight out of GP, out of Formula 2.
Granddad, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an F1 driver, reserve.
Yeah. It's like, they're in their late 20s. There's another driver who can't get a go. I mean, we had the Formula 2 race that Jack Doohan won, but the championship, Teo Pourchaire. Probably deserves a chance out there. And I think he's associated with Sauber. That's going to be interesting because Sauber next year will not be Alfa Romeo. They're going to be Sauber for 2 years before they suddenly become perhaps Audi. But there's increasing speculation that Audi deal may never actually happen. There's the people who are involved in pushing 100% for that are apparently no longer with the company, and the people who have taken over are starting to actually ask questions as to is this the best way for us to spend our motorsport budget, considering we were so successful in sports car racing around the world?
Oh, yeah. We propped up sports car racing for years, and now everyone else is getting the benefit of it. I mean, as far as gross simplifications go,
we were the pioneers. We were the people with the diesel. We were the people with the hybrid, and then suddenly it's just everybody else's, Ferrari and Lamborghini and all these people are diving in. And according to Graham Goodwin, he's saying that there could be at some stage, and it'll probably, if it's going to be announced, it will probably be, depending on who it is, it'll either be at the Daytona or next year at Le Mans, probably on the Friday of Le Mans, that there'll be another major OEM will come in. And the word is that it will probably be another Japanese company. So that would be interesting.
I would have said sorry. I was just going to say Audi's only big real advantage is Renee Garaci, isn't it?
Hey, I tell you what, she raced very well.
Pretty well.
She did very, very well. She was running 4th and 5th. She won the trophy category.
And that was another championship that went all the way to the end.
What's that?
Another championship that went all the way to the end.
Yeah, and there wasn't that. And there you have once again the benefit of GT3. I mean, because it's like you've got the locals battling it out, and it's like, well, I might just bring Christopher Mees out to give me a hand. Oh, that's funny. I've just Matty Campbell's not doing anything on my weekend. Oh, g'day, Mark. How are you? My mad cow Mark is with us, joining us late again. So it's good to catch up with you again. But I think that's the advantage of GT3. I don't know what Bathurst is. It's a 12-hour. I haven't heard much in terms of, apart from the fact that they've got a new naming rights sponsor, which is interesting because I hadn't heard anything about Liqui sort of moving away, and now Repco have put their hand up, and it's going to be the Repco 12-hour race. So, as I said, probably even though I've got my accommodation booked, I'm almost certainly not going to be up there because of all the damn operations I'm going to be having over the next few weeks and months. So, but who knows? I mean, if everything goes 100% according to plan, they said I might be capable of driving sometime in February. So if sometime in February means I can drive up to Bathurst, then I'll be there. Otherwise, yeah, I might have to find some other alternatives. But at least I got accommodation this time around, so I don't have to worry about camping, which I think, unfortunately. So if anybody wants some cheap camping gear, because I think, unfortunately, my camping days are now well and truly over. But yeah, so anyway, that's Bathurst. Anything? Oh, we got coming up this weekend out at Calder Park. We've got the High Tech Oil
Playground.
Series
Yeah.
happening under lights,
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting to see what the weather's going to be like. The roll racing, which I was supposed to be hosting. I was supposed to be commentating on the roll racing, but they, I had to ring them and say, look, I had to ring Pete and say, look, sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it there. I'm not in any fit condition to travel across Melbourne in one way, even if it was somebody else driving. I'm not going to, I'm not supposed to go anywhere. Although I did the other day, and nearly bloody killed me. I did not driving, but just I jumped on a bus and went somewhere, and about halfway on the bus went, "This is a really, really stupid idea."
And I read today that the High Tech Oils competition has a TV rights deal next year.
Yeah, well, they've been running on 7 Plus. They'll be on 7 Plus. Is it a new deal with somebody else, or
it's SBS, I think?
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that would make sense. Well, as Paul's saying, the Australian Superbikes from the Bend are coming up this weekend as well. That's always a really big meeting. It's the one that Jack Miller's run on a couple of occasions in the past, the final round of the year, and that'll be on SBS as well. So there is so much motorsport about on television and on streaming at the moment. It's an embarrassment of riches, which is fantastic for me because I've got nothing else to do with to be able to do with my time, and so between wall to wall cricket now, as I'm going to be, it seems, confined to bed for about 6 weeks, having some a regular diet of both cricket and motorsport, and a little bit of pro wrestling, just take my mind off of my troubles through will help out a lot.
If only we had a national sprint car series.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, that is such a wasted opportunity. That is a huge wasted opportunity. There are so many cars and such high quality. The racing's always good, and yet for some reason they just can't make it happen. The politics gets involved. I mean, they finally got drag racing semi sorted out. We saw the racing from Perth, from the Motorplex, the drags on 7 Plus with the funny cars and everything on Saturday night into Sunday morning. That was fantastic. There was supposed to be a race this weekend in Sydney for the National Drag Racing Championships. They've already pulled the plug on that. They're now going to rerun that on the Australia Day long weekend. Or the Australia Days, the Australia Day weekend, because of the weather this weekend. The forecast in Sydney is terrible, and this is the problem with drag race. This was talking to people out at Calder Park. They just said, we spend so much time and so much effort getting this track together, advertising it. Everyone turns up. Suddenly a day of rain comes in, and it's like, sorry guys, everyone go home. And they said, we just can't afford it. It's so weather dependent. The interesting thing is Steve Betts, who was running the drag strip at the Bend in South Australia, has been replaced. And he's been replaced with somebody who ran Santa Pod Raceway in England. And if you watch the Santa Pod YouTube channel, as I watch regularly, it's a very well-run organisation over there. They put on a hell of a show, and it can only be good. I don't know if Mad Cow Mark might know, because I know he watches regularly the stuff from Santa Pod as well. And the fact that one of the guys from Santa Pod is coming over here to run the Bend, I think is only a good thing for the Bend and only a good thing for local drag racing. So looking forward to that. Yes, Jimmy's saying vibration not a good thing for broken bones. Yeah, so tell me about it. Going over speed humps is even worse. Bad enough with my back, and now with a shoulder that's broken in 5 places. It's even with the
council never think of things like that.
No, they don't. There's some speed humps when I come back from the show of a Tuesday night when Darren comes in, when Darren the great McAuliffe comes in. I give Darren a lift home, and around the Dandenong area, he lives in Dandenong, and around that area, the speed humps they've put in there, they are incredibly dangerous because they are literally launching ramps. They are just like they're at a sharp angle like that, and you can't see them. And if you hit them really hard, you take off. They're a yump. You just fly. That cannot be safe.
And not exactly very green are they, councils, anymore. Every speed hump must be adding a huge carbon footprint, but
well, it's funny, like in the green leafy suburbs, they're complaining about those. Well, we want speed humps. We want speed humps. Now they're complaining because they're saying, everyone slows down, so you hear the cars roar up. They slow down. You got the engine braking. Then they go over, and then they hit them and roar away.
Accelerate away again.
Yeah, and it's like, so you use
people don't know what they want.
Who would have thought of that? That's amazing.
Yeah. As Mark is saying with the standard, great live stream. Well, technically, it's not a good live stream. I've had lots and lots of issues with the Sandapod, but the quality of the racing and the fact that they live stream everything, and it's a pretty reliable live stream. I've still got a problem. They cross the line. They just, and that's a technical term in television, that you never ever cross the line, and they cross the line too much with the Sandapod, and I'm sure there's practical reasons for it. They've never told me why, but it's really annoying because what you have is the cars are coming from one direction and they cut to another camera, and then the cars are going in another direction, and they cut again and they're going in another direction. It's really annoying, but Yeah, but it is a really good. But I think that having someone from Sandapod running the bend, along with the money and the efforts that Sam puts into the place, got to be a huge benefit for the sport. And unfortunately, we're no closer to having anything in Melbourne at this stage, and I think we're still a long, long way away unless some government or private money gets poured into Calder. Or they do some work. As I said before, there's nothing wrong with Heathcote. Heathcote's a fine venue, apart from the fact it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's you drive in via a goat track. But anyway,
some of those big pantakes might struggle with that.
Well, that was the problem. They did run a round of the Top Fuel Championship at Heathcote last year, and it was. The pits really weren't ready for it. They weren't in any position. So the Group 1 drivers and a lot of the group were not happy with the conditions that they found out there. They couldn't get the crowd in. It got so bad that the local police came down from Bendigo and just got on the turn off to the track and just blocked everyone and said, "No, go home. We can't. We just cannot fit any more people in there." The local fire brigade was apparently very worried as well because it was obviously high fire season, and they said if a fire breaks out around this place, we're not getting anybody out. There's just going to be too many people here. So there were issues which they were going to try and work through, and I think Lance was very confident that they would get that solved. But at this stage, there's still no sign of Heathcote being back on the schedule again, which is a shame because the track itself, the actual strip itself, seems to be in absolutely perfect condition. That's as Mark is saying, and this is one of the problems when there's an oil down, the show goes on with this is a Sandapod. You really don't have brakes. It's like they've got something. It's like okay, we've got an oil down in lane 1. Let's have a look at the the car crusher, or the super truck, or whatever they call the monster trucks, or let's have a look at the stunt riders, or let's have a look at the burnout competition, or let's have a band, or there's always something on to fill in that gap. Whereas in Australia, it's like, oh, we've got an oil down in lane one. Well, in the meantime, listen to the local radio station and we'll be back with you in half an hour or so if we're lucky. And you sit there twiddling your thumbs, and slowly but surely, you notice as the night goes on, the crowd gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, by the time, the eliminations come around, the finals, more than half the crowd's gone home.
Yeah. Well, it's.
Can I wrap up by giving a shout out to the officials at the Bathurst Challenge for avoiding putting out red flags whenever they could. They covered as much as they could under double wave yellows, which I thought was brilliant.
So how many laps did you get all up for the weekend? I mean, running around, because that's the attraction of this thing, isn't it? You get to do a lot more laps of Mount Panorama than you would normally do under normal circumstances.
Well, I got 4 runs of about 6 laps. We had I missed one session with mechanical problems. And then we had a Commodore on top of the mountain deciding to become a barbecue. And that brought out the red flags. There was nothing they could do about that. They had tenders all over the track. But I got at least 2 runs in with very little interference, and I could go for it. So, and I was able to achieve a better time. So I went away reasonably happy.
Oh, good on you, Richard, and good on Bathurst. And
they never. The officials and don't often get enough kudos for when they get it right.
Look, they're fantastic. We've said before. I mean, in terms of the way, the officials. And speaking of officials, I was going to say before, I had a bit of a term before. Speaking of officials, someone who's been involved in motorsport in the official area for many years is Sheridan Hopgood. And Sherry, in her day job, is in fact a nurse. And when I had all sorts of trouble when the big brace turned up to put to immobilise my shoulder, I had no idea how to get this bloody thing in. I had all sorts of. I was making myself, I'm not supposed to move this at all, and I had this. I've got it over my bloody head, and it's twisted sideways, and I'm in absolute agony. And I put out, how do you get this thing on? And Sherry put up her hand and said, "Hey, listen, I'm coming home from work. I'll pop in and I'll fit it up for you." And yeah, so thank you to that. So I've got it now. I had finally, after 2 weeks, I've had at least one really good night's sleep. I caught up on about 9 hours sleep in there. As I said, a couple of strong painkillers and a Valium certainly helped out as well. But this was. But thank you, Sheridan. Thank you, Sheridan, for Sheridan does a lot of work with motorsport, with the Grand Prix and with the Supercars and a whole bunch of grassroots motorsport, and her family. And so thank you to Sherry for helping out. Really do appreciate it. Nice to know you've got friends like that too. Who can come around and say, "Hey, I'm happy, working all day in a hospital," and then comes in, to tend to my needs as well. So thank you to Sherry. I really appreciate it. Okay, the TCM. What have we got here from Jimmy? The TCM last red flagged. You could see the workers just waiting for the signal to say it was over. Then they moved quickly. Yeah, I think there is a bit of that with the supercars. I really think there is a bit of that. They're not. They might get a word from somewhere saying, don't necessarily hurry, guys. Because at a certain time we can say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we've run out of time and we can cancel this thing." Which is one of the frustrations of being a support category on the supercars. And I can see why some people, this is why the GT championship under SRO will be, they will all be either Shannon's Nationals or standalone events, purely and simply because they don't want to get caught up with turning up with all of these cars, which are just as expensive or even more expensive than the supercars, and they turn up with all these professional teams and drivers and cars, and they get a couple of laps. Suddenly, the red flag goes up. And sorry, guys, we're going to have to we're going to have to stop your race because we've got a we've got the
time certain. Time certain.
The singers and the dancers coming out on the grid, and But anyway, so after the weekend, what have we learned? I mean, like in terms, Brody Kostecki, a worthy winner, I think, of the of the Supercars.
I'm so happy for everybody at the Erebus mob. They've done a brilliant job this year. They've got on top of the new car as fast or faster than everybody else, and and
you've got to like him or loathe him. You've got to give Barry Ryan a lot of credit for that as well. He certainly got in there and he's sharpened things up. The impressive thing I was about that place, because they're just down the road from me. They're about 5 or 10 minutes down the road. You go round to the Erebus workshop, and it's nothing flash. I mean, we went to Team 18, and it was for the open day with the interview with Colin Bond. And it's a pretty big factory, and it's very modern and all the rest of it. The Erebus workshop, what they're doing in that place over in Dandy South, it's a very tiny little space, and the fact that they're doing all of that, and it was so good for Betty too. I mean, because she's had her knockers over the time, and for her to come up and have a supercar winning championship driver, and for the team to have a win. Congratulations to Betty and Daniel and all the team at Erebus. They've done a really great job. But so anyway, I think that's about all we've got time. Actually, we've been gone on because I had to take a break because I was in what was called extreme pain.
You can see that, yeah.
But anyway, I've walked it off now, but now I will hopefully get out of extreme pain by taking a bit of a walk around and hopefully taking some. I don't want to take, because they dole out the painkillers so miserly. I'm only taking them at when I go to bed at night, the really serious ones, the oxycodone, because otherwise they run out. And you go to the local doctor and say, "I'd like some more, please," and they go, "No, you've had you should be over the pain by now. Just put up with it." It's like, that's all well. That's all well. I can do that in the daytime, not a problem of a daytime. But you bloody get into bed at night, and suddenly it hits you, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and feels like your arm's going to fall off. Yeah, it's like you get into a nice, comfortable position and go, "Oh yes, okay, that's it," and then you go to sleep and you try and roll over on it, because I always sleep right, and of course I suddenly roll over onto a broken shoulder with my lazy 20 kilos of weight, which is what caused the break in the first place.
And of course, then you don't get back to sleep again.
Of course, so you get up and you end up watching live streaming of motorsport or cricket or
let's see what Santapod's doing.
Exactly, no, that is one of the problems with Santapod, the fact that they're also Motor Mania on from America. It's very grassroots stuff, but they've got so much stuff on. It's like even the week. I mean, during the week they go into Motor Mania sometimes, and there'll be some sort of Wednesday night drag meeting from some 8th mile track in Pancras, Missouri, or wherever it bloody is, and you sit there and you end up watching that, and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's like, "Hi guys, watching from Australia," and some great cars, some great racing, and we live in. We're very lucky to live in interesting times where this generation don't realise how lucky they are to have a lot of this shit, because when you consider it used to take us sometimes 3 to 4 weeks to find out who won Le Mans, and there would be a little thing like a picture
10 second the world of sport, black and white.
It's like meanwhile in France, and you see them waving the tricolour, the checkered flag as they came through, and that was it. That was the story, and that was
wait for
2 weeks later.
Have to wait for the next issue of Racing Car News.
Racing Car News, yes,
Yes,
which
yes.
is still, in my
6
opinion,
months
the best
ago.
racing magazine ever produced. The Journal of Record. Yeah, that's the thing. As I was saying, plenty of drag racing on during the USA summer. Yes, there is a site that tells. I don't have it on, but yes, there is a site which gives you all of the drag racing. They actually even had local drag racing as well when we did the live streams from Calder, Adelaide, and Hidden Valley. They were running. We popped up there as well because we said to a couple of people, how from America, how did you find the feed? And they said they found it on that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's my saying.
An aggregator, huh?
Even small strip stream live, it's becoming more and more. It's becoming so much easier if you're happy with that quality, and that's what I like about Motor. And that's what Peter tried to do at Calder. The problem is you go out there and you do it at that level in Australia, and then you get every man and his dog going, "No, it doesn't have this graphic and it doesn't have that," and there's only one locked off camera, and yeah, Street Racing Channel on YouTube. It's insane. Yeah, there's so many. There's just so many things, and there's always karting on the weekend as well. Usually from Europe, and also coming up, we've got the Thailand Super Series has their last race coming up either this weekend or next weekend. So this weekend we've got the Asian Le Mans Series. We've got Calder Park and the super bikes from the Bend. Lots and lots of things to
New Zealand racing is in full swing.
Well, what's that?
New Zealand racing is in full swing.
Yeah, well, that's been streamed live too. Their Speed Series it pops up regularly too, and it's in a good time slot too because it starts really early there. So you get up in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday morning and flick the New Zealand racing on, and you can watch some of that, and then it's all over by about 1 or 2 o'clock, and then you've got the afternoon to yourself. But you're really, really lucky. Hey, listen, we better head off. As I said, we'll see what happens. Doc has changed hours. Doc was around today. Thank you once again to Doc for coming around and helping me out today. There's not much. I've always said, it's wonderful living on your own until, of course, something goes wrong. And right now, something has gone very, very wrong. And Doc came around and and the white tornado came in and did a million and one things. Unfortunately, the two things I wanted him to do, he did, but he did a million and one other things. He's done an amazing job. I can't recognise this place right now. I've got everything's out of the road and everything's packed away, and there's no more trip hazards, and bins are full and all sorts of things. So thank you, Doc, for coming over. So he came after a hard day's work and came in and helped out. But he's changed his hours, and he said, I might be able to start coming back to Full Course Yellow. And I said, well, this was going to be sort of the last show. But as I said, probably for my own sanity as much as anything else, to have somewhere to come and think about something other than what I'm going through at the moment, not just with the shoulders, with other stuff as well. It would be yes. I think. And as we say, we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. There's no such thing as an off season in motorsport. Okay, everybody, be watching Channel 31 tomorrow night at 9 o'clock for our special interview with the great Colin Bond. Just a fabulous guy, and also our brilliant band, the Grandfather Paradox, and that's tomorrow night on the final edition of In Pit Lane for Channel 30 and on Channel 31, at least for this year and for the foreseeable future until I get all this medical stuff sorted out. Because at the moment, I know that at minimum, as far as the shoulder goes, I know at minimum they're sort of saying it will be it's a 3-phase process, and they've said each phase will last about 6 weeks. At some stage by the end of the second one, I may be able to get back and do things. But that would put us through basically till March. So anyway, let's see. Okay, we'll see you. Hopefully, I'll see you all next week. And keep following us. Keep following the YouTube channel. Keep following us on the Facebook page. Thank you, everybody, for turning up tonight. It was a very last minute thing. I just sort of realised very late at night that it was like, I haven't set that thing up. But and I'm starting to cramp up again. So I will say to everybody,
Good night.
good night. We'll see you. Hopefully, see you next week. If not, keep an eye out and subscribe to the channel, and you'll know when we're coming back. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you
See ya.
later. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.